Well, the absolute goal here is a self-encompassing, totalizing system that incorporate all of the aspects of nature, of the world, of the universe, of the cosmos. If it can be thought, if it can be sensed, it can be explained in this, it can be utilized in this explanatory framework. It's a schematic, it's a skeleton, and there are components to it, and it's multifaceted, like a dodecahedron or tetrahedron, not tetrahedron, but any multi-sided, three-dimensional spherical shape, how to put it. Meaning there are different avenues into and the different channels to get into discussing the matter. So it does not stand of solid, thinking of solid used as a illustrative metaphor, that it's not, so it's not held like a thing. So in these moments where it's trying to be distilled, it must be plotted almost like as careful if you were trying to depict a picture with a loom. The threads and the tangent must be laid in that fashion to display and portray, convey what is trying to be communicated here. And what is trying to be communicated here, one of it is the feeling of the dream, and that the events that occur within life share that similarity to what a dream is. But what a dream allows one is one step back, that one does not, well, if they're having an ordinary dream, they sense themselves in a place carrying out a same operation with not prior knowledge of anything. So if one found themselves in a hospital in this dream, they wouldn't know what led them to the hospital. They're only concentrated exclusively on the scene of being hospitalized, where in reality there's a trail, there's a trace, and and it carries evidence and it carries explanation. But in dream, that question is not usually asked, that what led this and what brought this about. So one just gets going in media res, and that is meaning that it gets started at the end, in the middle of the story. But like ripples, they ripple as they appear. They're able to ripple either forward or backwards, and backwards from information that they do not have into the future unforeseeability. So they in the central moment, man is really capable of carrying out what has been. And what has been is the reasoning and the ways of the past. And we call this the prepotent step of the world. So if you're walking down a staircase, or find this out in any busy traffic area, or wherever a man traffics, and wherever a man traffics, it can work on other animals as well, migratory animals. But in this way, to be more specific on the prepotent steps, if you were to find anywhere that man travels, you can find him in a certain let's call it a domain, or a certain section. If you was walking on a stair, if you're given enough of them, they will fulfill this bell curve prediction, and there will be footprints. It won't be exactly overlapping, but it won't be exactly completely in the same measure with the previous, but they all carry that averageness, and they create a certain continuity from that averageness. So there's a certain spot that's demarcated, because this is just man's habit of traversing across the world. So being that he's always made by past material, he doesn't really sit down and try to intuit from all directions. He does not sit down and try to intuit from up, down, and from bottom up, left, right, and then across the z-axis, or some other approximation that he's not available, some other available approximation that he's not familiarized himself with, that he's not so normalized to as he is to this standard prepotent way of dealing with the world. And creativity springs from this unexpectancy. It comes in the direction of having never seen it done before, not in that way at least. So that's an attribute, an accolade that's usually attributed to, well, the best of them in sports and athletics and wherever, man, there's many domains where man has a competitive hierarchy. But take him anywhere there and measure the greats. They all carry that similarity. There's something meta about them, and meta just really means to enclose, to clash the many into the one that they are similar with. And well, of course, there has to be that one sort, and that we're similar with, thinking about what greatness means when it also equals to creativity. And this goes a major part in it is how life tends to function, how life tends to continue or build or manufacture diversity. How can this singular be broadcasted, be bursted into and the many? How can they then converge back into this prior equalness that's all the differences of the world that are not in this moment they are not in this moment coupled with one another, but are capable of being coupled, are then coupled, and from there that's a type of expansion. Because in the final analysis, what ultimately is the case of the beginning, speaking of the singular future entity, let's call it, that split off into the divergence of the world. When you think of plants and think of things like air, and I've gone down this line before, that all things can break down and decompose and decay into atoms and molecules. That's what those are the building blocks. But you can find that giving them configuration. I mean, this is the creativity of the configuration of atomic or of elements that creates the differences in the world. I mean, think about it from the electric effervescence, or from the electric effervescence, and then think about it to the solidness of woody plants. I mean, these are differences in just characteristics, physical characteristics, and differences but ultimately difference in atomic composition and arrangement. How a plant differs from electricity, and of course electricity flowing through a conductor in this case. I mean, but the essence of electricity, also comparing it to the essence of plankton and breaking that down to its atomic structure. So that's the way of relating to the divergence of the world from a singular means. What guides this? I mean, before we were speaking of the subserver. The subserver is the part of the world that influences the atom. The subserver is the part of the world that knows the shape of a hand prior to there being perspective of consciousness. The subserver knows the shape of a plant. So there's an eye of nature on the outside, or not on the outside, on the inside, on. It's on, meaning that it understands and is shaped of everything. Meaning that when men, of course, I mean, this is such a rudimentary argument, not going down that line, that man is not a product of his own creation, but thinking of the subserver now included in man, that when you think of the communication between cells as they arrange, when they are arranging in the embryo, what gives them their measurement to stop growing and then stop well, not even growing but really duplicating in their case, but how to stop doing this and go and doing that, the communication between them, giving them the instructions and in the cellular machinery. But thinking about the shape of an ear, think about the shape of a retina, think about the differences in function between organs and the synergistic interaction between organs, and then that operates the organism. Down to all these details is the same subserver. It plays the part in configuration. And this is an essential aspect of the Tao. I mean, it goes back to the Tao. This is the guiding aspect that also guides the Logos. The Logos is the informing voice. And what it means to be an actualized human being also just means having, like in most cases, or all cases where, and this is evident, it's having a quality diamond. And that's just another case of being coupled with the world. Or being coupled with the world, it just means that same thing, that you have better knowing of it, and this is the word of the subserver, because the subserver, it's the active force of God, because it deals with the real, it deals with gene, and it's not just the unmoved mover and the thing that is independent yet everything else depends on it. It's not the prime mover argument, but yes, it still shares a resemblance with the prime mover, because it's the active force. That's what it is. It's this observer is an active force in the world, because it's subterranean, imperceptible, and yet it observes in the world, and it can manipulate the world, and give it its design, and give it its intelligence. I mean, intelligent design is such an easy argument to conclude with, or to add to one's artillery or arsenal in enumerating one's ontological decisions, relating to the aspects of the world that entertains or collects entities, or collects essences and aspects, meaning that what this observer means for the world, when it gives it, when they're thinking of the intelligent design argument, that it's obvious only to organisms like the higher animals, that the world is intelligently designed. It just makes sense, even though they're well, thinking that we know better. We can see a defect in the world. It's like, why not do it that way? It might be easier. It's easier. It's easier if you can talk, probably with not running the risk of choking, or some of the design flaw, like a mechanic can look down at the engineer's work and sort of deduce improvement. But ultimately, the intelligence behind it is not purely analytical or diagnosing. It's not purely analytical or diagnosing. It also develops, meaning that it is the power to control and command atoms, to command materialization. It was the spirit that preceded materialization, but the spirit is an essential call, and it's an essential starter. It's that initial, essential, necessary energy to jumpstart the system into fulfilling physicality, into fulfilling the transformation of materialism that we see in color, that we hear in sound, that we smell in sense and olfactory, and we taste orally, and it's sour, it's bitter, and so forth, etc., etc. We mean these things, and we can operate on these things simply because we're coupled with the world, and there needs to be some way of having our engine run and continue running. And these are just the ways that the world is designed in one form. This is another idea. Okay, this is an idea. Have it be this way. Have them eat from here, and then gravity pulls them down out to the rectum and out the bowel, and then give them a skeleton designed in such a way where the control center is encased in solid bone, and some other vital organs are surrounded in bone, because they're going to be dealing with a world where they might have clashes with one another. I mean, these are just laying them down. You can just feel the conversation, but it's not acoustically available, but you can feel and sense the conversation that describes and allows men to be, even if you can make an argument for the expositor, but the argument, the description itself, because coupled once again, it's just finding its way into the relationship, how between connection and also relation to one another at our skill. That the one-to-one correlation between just simply the explanatory attempt and the world, that truthfulness about it, also then provides the sentence merely as a placeholder until or to be. The world is made of miracles. The most mysterious and miraculous assumption I have, or presupposition I have, is the fact that no, it's not really a presupposition. It's more of a belief or ponderance or thought. Is that immediately the human does not fall into convulsions and he starts to twitch, that, oh, I'm alive. He starts to become like an automaton, but he's designed to keep his cool, but he keeps his cool so much that he actually does not know what truly is going on, that the world is made of magic and you're thrown into existence for a sojourn, and what are you to do with it, and all these things go on to be. And inevitably he leads to where he can transform the world into ways that are most suitable to the to his liking, and for the level of thing that he is. I mean, this is just call them design errors, but of course say this, and then at the same time speaking on the other side, knowing that nature knows, and nature is after a story. It is engrossed in a story here. The history of man, from his prehistory to his prehistory, his prior history, his history since time equals zero. I mean, it's after this. It's such a wondrous chronological tree. I mean, it branches off in different places, and there's context between one side to another. I mean, it's just marvelous to know and to understand and to trace down the fact that man understands the world too, and he's able to really remanufacture, and he's able to duplicate the works of nature in his workshops and laboratories, and in his head and from his armchair. I mean, that's just really playing with at the lion stable, because it's only dealing with God at that point, and you are really still very close to your creator, and you're remaking creation. I mean, this is just great achievements. But on the tail side is the fact that man just is still blame. He's not exonerated from low consciousness activity, and these are the roots of his polycrisis. Wherever you'll find circumstances that are not becoming of a higher animal, I mean, they're just low consciousness activity. We're constantly on the run to alleviate this bug or feature in one place or another. But however, it must be ameliorated. He must be alleviated from this distraction and ameliorate his state. And he's trying to steal the culture only for one thing, is to transform it, to make it anew, to make it palatable, more acceptable to the likes of us who have higher standards for man and humans. I mean, you're given a limited time to dance with Mother Nature. I mean, what are you doing being a cog in your brother's machine? You spend your best years, working in a system. I mean, well, of course, it's comedy, it's a grand tragedy, but if you're there on the ground floor, it's not of that same reputation. It's more just the fact that you're waiting on their savior, but you're looking in the wrong place, and your approach is different. Yeah, hinting at the other ones, and it comes to very easily, very subtly, that it's just this is the call, and this is salvation. And then when he happens to do that, that's akin to his rapture, and then he's able to move on to this other state with less internal contradiction. I mean, well, it's a plan worth working on, and each has their role and their place in it. I mean, take your time, think it over, evaluate it from the comfort of your own mentality. But I doubt one reaches a different conclusion if they analyze the situation intrinsically, intricately. It only boils down to that he simply must advocate on his own behalf for his birthright, that he needs to be taken to Eden, and there's no other way about it. And this is the direction to head to, and then that's the movement, and this is mobilization and organization, and then happiness, and that's it.